a.m. Central African time, that being Diamond Platinums with Kamata Grab. And let me tell you something about the next conversation we're about to have. I want to grab all the information because this woman has startled my morning. Now, from a one-woman dream to a multi-million-rand renewable energy powerhouse, we're talking to Hleziphi Mtshizane, the founder, the visionary behind InPursuit Renewable Energy. She's not just lighting up homes, she's training young artisans, creating jobs, and working with agencies like the Gauteng Growth and Development Agency to build a cleaner, brighter South Africa. She joins us on the line from China. Thank you so much for making time for us, Hleziphi. We appreciate you on the show. Good afternoon, shall I say, for you?
Yes, it is good afternoon from China, Shenzhen. Thank you so much, Shayla, for having me on the show.
Let's start off with the beginning, the foundation. And I said I'm going to grab as much information because your story is one that rocks my brain. Okay. So you started off alone, no team, no big funding. Talk to me about the most difficult of days. And the reason I'm asking this is because it's easy to latch on to hope, right? So the days where things are going good, you can push for another day. But those difficult days where the dream is not dreaming, is a problem. Talk to me about one of the most difficult days that you had experienced in this growth.
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Shayla. So I started in 2017 from a Braai area in my home after having worked in corporate for about 10 years. And I had this dream of really building this energy services empire. My background is electrical engineering. And so I would set off into building InPursuit Renewable Energy as a brand. And so that would be between 2017 and 2022. The 5 years were really difficult because I worked without being paid for work that I was doing. I was really working to build a brand. And so I had no salary. I had moved from, quite a good corporate salary, and I had a family. I had 2 kids, and so I started living without a salary, and it was difficult. But I think the dream really kept me going. So I had family and friends helping me here and there, petrol money, and basics that I needed. And here I am. 8 years later, I built a company that is able to provide for me, other families, as well as then myself.
Sure. I think what's really interesting is that we don't get to hear those stories about the day where there was no petrol money, on the day where we needed friend X or family member Y to provide something for us. And this kind of makes the walk shameful for people who are dependent on social media to understand what entrepreneurship is like. When you were busy, in the thicket of things, piecing together InPursuit as a brand, did you think that it would hit multi-million-rand status?
Somehow I did, but I had no idea how long it would take me and how the first million will come through. And so I kept hoping that every day would be my big day, and that day would come 5 years later. And even when it came, it was so hard to believe because I had held on for so long. And so when it did come, I did know that it was a big break, but I still wanted to just be sure. So I didn't really celebrate it immediately until we started seeing the next million coming in, and we were being recommended for similar bigger projects. And then I realized that first, making of a million was actually the breakthrough. And it does look like we are not going to look back, but we are going to build from there.
Come on, ma'am. I'm here for that. I'm absolutely here for that. Now, renewable energy has become the talk of the town. It's no longer a want, it's a necessity. right? Talk to us about the state that you had found yourself in 8 years ago. You know, how had you gauged society? I understand that you come from an electrical engineering background. However, there was like some extensive research that you had done to see, okay, forecasting into the future, we are going to need this kind of energy. It's no longer just a desire, it's no longer something that someone can have as an option or as an addition to what it is they're depending on, which was coal at the time. Walk us through the I want to say research process, but I suppose it's not just research that I want to gauge. I want to gauge your headspace at the time and how you saw it fit to enter into the renewable energy market.
Yeah. So in 2017, by that time, I had been already almost 5 years in the South African renewable energy market. And so my headspace at that point in time is then we had just as a country commissioned, a large number of bigger projects. And the first project was commissioned in 2014. So that would be 3 years later after the first commissioning of our first asset of renewable energy in South Africa. And so where my headspace was at that point in time, which would then inspire the founding of InPursuit, was that I had seen that, we needed global help as South Africa to actually get to that milestone as a country. But my headspace was, we then need to do this, the African way. We appreciate the help that we've received to set a foundation of these type of skills for the African market. But I did believe that by bringing ourselves and how we understand engineering and science as Africans, we can actually do it in a manner that then speaks specifically to the problems we are having as Africans when it comes to, sustainable energy. And so I would go then on this journey to then to say, how do I use my skills and my experience to then craft engineering and energy solutions that are, specific to African problems. And that's exactly who we then are becoming and have become as InPursuit. And so we use our global experience, I have worked in the UK and I've delivered projects across the African market, Uganda, Zambia, Zimbabwe. And so I take that knowledge and say, then how do we solve even from, the bigger space of needing larger energy projects to actually helping smaller businesses and also helping households. And so that's the fleet of our services. So we look at, large energy provisions using our global experience and then also tailoring that to the specific African market. Also, we then take our understanding on solving for big projects in also now helping small business. I mean, we've helped over 70 businesses in South Africa to actually transition from using, traditional energy, which has now become scarce, to actually adapt in using solar and battery energy storage. Now we are even moving more forward in looking at, now that we've played a significant role in transitioning business and households in South Africa. We are actually, which is the reason that brings us to China as well, is to see how do we then, take part in other areas, like, for example, e-mobility, which is electronic vehicles. But we can talk more about that.
Absolutely, ma'am. I think the conversation with respect to electric vehicles is a very interesting one, especially in the African context, given the place that we find ourselves in. Let's talk about solutions. You spoke something, or you said something rather, that kind of caught my attention, is that you tailor make for the market, which is the reason you've become credible and you have landed that multi-million-rand status. What solutions are presently tangible for the African context? And I ask this because when the conversation around renewable energy comes in, the first cry is funding. Right. Everyone is saying it's expensive. We
Yes.
can't migrate. We can't depend on solar. I don't know if we can depend on wind. I don't know if we have access to biogas. And so there's this headspace that already sort of dials down and says, not for me, because it's too much money. Let's talk about the solution just generally for the African context and whether it is feasible and tangible.
Yes. And so, yes, indeed, I mean, technology does come at, a significant cost. But we have to think about the way we actually intend to fund it. I mean, if I look at the work that we've done so far, and what really makes us unique as a business is actually we've provided, multiple tailored solutions, particularly to over the 70 clients that we've done, surprisingly through social investment. So our idea in moving into that space was to actually go into the investment market and actually change their minds around what impact, investment looks like. Typically, for example, in an African market, when one talks about, community development, they would think about, the giving away of typically food parcels or giving away money to actually help with the basics. But we went to the partners that we work with on impact investment, and we said to them, instead of giving people just the day-to-day needs, please also note that energy has become a basic need. Why don't you then divert some of the funding into some of those basic needs that are short-term into long-term solutions such as energy solutions? And we've managed to convince a few impact investors in the South African public space and in the international global market to actually divert those funds to then fund, business that wants to then transition with renewable energy. And that's how we've been able to assist in diverting funding into the transitioning to renewable energy space in that manner. And then secondly, we are also then in the raising of capital as well for the larger project. As you might be aware that we are already an independent power producer. So the way we raise our funding is not typical to us just going to banks and saying that we need money to develop our project. But what happens is we also highlight, the impact that the project is going to have. And so the funding solution ends up being creative in that while it may be traditional funding, it also has aspect of, community development in the long run. And I think creative funding solutions for energy project in South Africa will have to be quite unique from how we saw the initial investment in the energy space happen.
Hleziphi, another arm to your offering is the training of artisans. Walk us through that.
Yes. So between 2022 and 2024, once again, in just being creative on using funding that was already available, let's say in community development, we convinced a South African bank, Nedbank, to actually give us money to do a community development program that focuses in rather giving, money for, like the basics that we spoke about around food, maybe around clothing or similar, that would be typical contributions. We actually convinced them to actually rather train young people so that those young people will be able to secure jobs. And so that's how our artisanal program would then be born. So we then raised, again, social impact funding to then to date train over 200 young people across 6 provinces in South Africa to become solar artisans and also become energy efficiency artisans.
And lastly, Hleziphi, just for the individual listening who wants to start their business, they're saying, listen, even me, I want that status, multi-million-rand empire, and more is where they want to go to. What words of counsel would you say to them at this very stage?
I would really say, I think persevere, and also just really understand that there will be these difficulties. And as soon as you come into an understanding that, the multiple failures as part of the process are actually, the secret sauce that will take you to success, you must learn from each and every failure. And from that failure, then start building the next on how it will solve for similar problems. And I think once you start building that capacity within yourself, then you will definitely, be able to achieve your vision. And I think that's what has helped me. And in addition to that, continuous self-development as a business leader, as an entrepreneur, and hanging around people who are in the same headspace and the thinking space also helps, because even when the going gets tough, at least even the people around you are able to actually give you encouraging words to keep you going.
Sure. I love that line. Your multiple failures become your secret sauce. I am taking that and starting that
Yeah.
business, ma'am. Thank you so much for joining us, Hleziphi. We appreciate your presence on the show this morning.
Thank you so much for having us. Thank you so much for highlighting InPursuit's work. Really appreciate it.
That is the voice there of visionary behind InPursuit Renewable Energy that started off 8 years ago as a one-woman business and is now a multi-million-rand empire that speaks to the necessity for renewable energy resources across South Africa and abroad. It is 10 a.m. Central African time. Time for the latest in news with Nosipho Zuma.